I'm going to make any kind of a racing game, I'm going to have to know the position of the cars in the game, right? So how do I do that? I have a track, the cars are driving around the track. How do I know who's in first, second, or third place? So in this video, I have a method that I'm going to use to determine the position of the cars, and that's going to be using checkpoints. The checkpoints, the closer I put them together, the more accurate the positioning of the cars I'm going to be able to determine. So here I have my racetrack. There are no checkpoints on here yet. Just explaining my situation here. These cars that you just saw driving around, that was using ML agents and the neural network library to train those cars how to drive around a track. So, I have the structure here, but the main thing we're going to figure out here is how to tell who's in first, second, and third. So here are my game objects for my scene. I made an empty game object called checkpoints, and in here I'm going to start adding some checkpoints objects, which this is just basically going to be a cube, and I'll call it check. I think 0, I can name it like that. And you're like, where is it? It's probably somewhere off into the distance in the center of this whole scene that I've created. So I'm going to have to move it closer to position. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bunch of walls with these. So let's increase the length. This is the red. That's the x-axis. So I think 20 should be good to be long enough to go across the road. Right. Okay. So 20 should be good enough to go across the road. And let me just angle that to match up with the curve of the road. Now when a car comes and hits that, it should be able to detect that a car passes a checkpoint. I guess I could bring it up a little bit higher. All right, so I have a checkpoint. Now, the checkpoints are going to be there. When the game is being played, they probably don't need a renderer. And there's two types of collision objects in Unity. There's the on collision enter collision, and then there's an on trigger enter. Trigger will allow the car to pass through the object, but it will detect when the car does hit the object. So I'll make all these like checkpoint walls with the is trigger enter checked. So this is one checkpoint wall. And as I'm putting the checkpoints around, I may want to just visually be able to see them, just to make it easier for me. So I will turn on the mesh renderer, and I could just use a material that's kind of transparent. So let me make a material here. Create material. I'll just call it the checkpoint material. And then I'll just make it a transparent thing so it's kind of like faded out that you can see through it. And then when I come over here to the color on the alpha channel, I can just turn it down low, and you see how it's like see-through. And then I could assign that material to the checkpoint. So it makes the checkpoints kind of like invisible, but I could see where they are as I start setting them up around the track. And other than transparent, there's fade, which even makes it more faintly visible. But I'll just use transparent for now. So first thing I have to do is place checkpoints all around the track. So I have this one checkpoint. I'm going to want to tag it as a checkpoint. So I did add a tag called checkpoint. Checkpoints aren't moving objects, so I'll call them static. So I have my checkpoint object. It's a trigger, and I tagged it as a checkpoint. Now I can start duplicating these all around the track. Now I want to duplicate them in order, because the order of the checkpoints, it's going to kind of help me know when a car passes a checkpoint, like where they are on a track. So this is going to be my start checkpoint right here, like the finish line one, even though it's not really matching up with that. I could fix that. Now I'm just going to do Control D, and let's see, how many should I put? I guess I put them really, really close. Like, see, there's these little etches here. If I put them like that, let me look at it from the top view here and start trying to just place these all around the track. Oh, okay, so I got a track, everything going around the whole thing with checkpoints. Now, the closer the checkpoints, the more accurate the position reporting is going to be. And I have 163 of them going around the track. So they're visible and they're triggers. And because they're triggers, you'll see that the cars are going to be able to drive right through them. Right here, I'll show you. So there you go. The cars are able to drive right through them. And of course, seeing those checkpoint walls, they don't have to be seen. I could just select all of them and I could turn off the renderers, and now it will look like the other thing, but checkpoints are there still. So the checkpoints are there. The thing that's important to remember is that they're in number order around the track. Okay, meaning like, okay, if this one's 0, this one's 1, 2, 3, and that I don't have something out of order like 0, 1, 5, 3, because that's going to mess up, the way I'm going to, use the checkpoints. And in the scripts I have, I'm using the checkpoint name. What's in the parentheses is a number, and that's how I'm going to know which checkpoint it is when I collide with something. I get the name, and I'm going to take the number out of the name to know which checkpoint it is. So that was the first thing I had to do, is add all those checkpoints to the track. Now I also did something else to my cars. If I look at one of my cars, on the back of the car, I added a little text. I added a 3D text object. That is it's just one of these 3D object, Text Mesh Pro text, and that's what that little T is there. So here it is, and I could position it and stuff like that, and I could set the font size, etc., so that the name shows on the back of the car. And on there, I could just so I could tell which car is which by looking at the name. And the other thing I did is I added here, this is a UI Text Mesh Pro text, this leaderboard thing. That's what this is. And it's the same thing. It's from Text Mesh Pro, but it's a UI instead of a 3D object. And since it's UI, you'll see it. I see it when I go on the game screen. Right here, it says leaderboard when I go to the game view. And it's the same thing. It's just text. And with this text, I'm going to just display a list of all the car names, but the car names will be in position order. Okay? So the cars will start recording their how many checkpoints they passed once they pass the finish line or the start line checkpoint. So all these cars here, they'll have to make it up to the start line of a lap, and then their laps will begin and their checkpoints will start counting. So that's me speaking out my plan of how I'm going to get the positions of the cars. Now in code, if I look at it, I had to do certain things. The first thing here, where I have all the checkpoints in this game object here, I have all these. This is an empty game object, and inside I put all my checkpoints, and that's for some organization here. So on the checkpoints object, I added a checkpoint script. This is going to keep track of handling which is the next checkpoint and stuff like that for me. So I'll just show you the script here. So on my checkpoint script, okay, this is slightly darker gray, so I'm not using that statement, so I can take it out. So it's just a checkpoint script. It's driving off amount of behavior. I'm going to have a list of all my checkpoints that I'm going to store here in the checkpoint script. So it's going to, when the game starts, I'm going to get all these here. I mean, I know they're the transform of checkpoints, but just for efficiency, I want to get access to them. So I'll have them in a list. And then here in the start method, I'll actually go through and read all the transforms and put them into a list. Okay. Then the two things I want to do in my checkpoint script, these are public methods because they're going to be getting called from the car script or from the leaderboard script, from other places from other scripts I'm going to call this. So one thing is I have a function here to extract the number from a string. That string is going to be the name of the checkpoint. Okay, and that uses a regular expression. This is regular expressions. This is something that's from C#. Okay, so basically what it's saying is take the string, whatever the string is that's given in here, and that would be like the name, like check parenthesis 10 or 20 parenthesis, whatever the number is. It's going to be one of these names here. So it's going to take that, And then everything that is not a number, that's what this syntax means here. It's a regex syntax. So everything that is not a digit from 0 to 9, I'm going to take it and blank it out. So for example, what comes in here, if into this function the user passes in check 10, then when the function is finished, this regular expression thing is going to convert that to 10, because the 1 and the 0 are the only things that are not the only things that are from 0 to 9. So that's the only thing left. So that's going to be a string of 10. And then that will be converted into a integer, 10. And it will return the integer. So that's what this function does. Now this get next checkpoint name, first thing I do is, well, here I use extract number from string right here in this function. So I'm going to pass in the current checkpoint name. That's going to be basically what I'm planning on doing here is the cars, when they pass a checkpoint, when the trigger hits, the trigger enter hits for one of these checkpoints, I'll have the name of that checkpoint. So say this car hits a checkpoint. Let me show that. Just see them visible again. Hits this one. Say this is checkpoint 2. That'll be the current checkpoint name, and I want to get the name of this next checkpoint. So coming into here, it'll say checkpoint 2, and then the current number will be, like, say it would, all right, let's just like put in the comments here. So say the current name is checkpoint 2, right? That's the current. Okay. Equals checkpoint 2. Then here with the extract number from string, I'm going to get, what am I going to get? I'm going to get a number 2, and that's going to be an integer. So that'll be an integer 2. And then I'll just figure out the next number. After 2 should come 3. But there's one situation where I don't want it to be the next number. Say these checkpoints are going around the loop. This is checkpoint 0, right? But then when I get to the last checkpoint over here, which is the one before 0, I don't want the next checkpoint to be 164. There is no checkpoint 164. This is a loop. So after my last checkpoint, I want it to loop back. The next number will be 0, not 164. So that's what this is doing here with next number. It sees if the current number plus 1 is greater than how many checkpoints I have, minus 1, because the arrays start from 0. So if my current checkpoint number plus 1 is greater, then if that is true, then I'll wrap around and the next checkpoint number will be 0, or the next checkpoint number will be 3, right? So if my checkpoint's 2 and it's not 164, it's not 163, my next checkpoint number is going to be 3, you know? And then over here, I could just build the name, right? Because I know the way I named them here. I can just build a name that the next checkpoint name is going to be check with the number in there. It will be, the next one is going to be check 3. And I return that, and that's what this function does. So that's all this script does. It's going to be called by all the cars, so I put it here in the checkpoint script, okay, instead of putting it in the car script. So that's happening there. What's happening in the car script is all the stuff with the checkpoints is going to happen when I hit a checkpoint, when the car hits a checkpoint. So here in the on trigger enter, because the checkpoints are going to be trigger collisions, which allows my car to drive through the checkpoint, not a collision. So it's on trigger instead of on collision. So first I make sure that there is a script checkpoints in the scene, you know, that there is it could find that there's a checkpoint and there's a checkpoint script attached to it. That's what the script checkpoints variable of my script is here. Here in the initialize, I try to define the checkpoint script. But if I don't find a checkpoint object, I guess that's going to stay equally null. So here, if it's not null, then there was a checkpoint script in the scene. So then I'll see what did I trigger off of? Is the tag checkpoint? Yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and do something. First thing we got to see, have I passed the finish line to start the racing counting of checkpoints yet? Has the car come and have all these cars back here come and hit this checkpoint to start counting? So that's what this if statement is doing here. So if the collided if the thing I triggered off of is equal to check 0, then I'll increment my finish line pass to 1, and I'll say that my checkpoint name equals check 0. Okay. So here, finish line pass is still equal to 0. I didn't add a 1 to it because finish line pass is over here. See, it's a variable, and it starts off by default being 0. So if I never even pass checkpoint 0, then finish line pass will still equal 0. Then don't do anything else. Just wait for the next trigger. Wait for the first time I trigger to check 0. Otherwise, I've already passed checkpoint 0, so finish line pass is not equal to 0, so I can continue. So now I'm going to do the regular thing I'm going to do for when the car passes through all the checkpoints of the track. Is I'm going to say, okay, what's going to be my next checkpoint name? So if I pass through checkpoint 0, what's the next checkpoint name? See, so here I call script get checkpoints. So if I'm checkpoint 0, this function is going to get checkpoint 1. If I'm checkpoint over here, the last checkpoint, 163, then get next checkpoint name is going to return checkpoint 0 and loop around. So I get the next checkpoint name. And I say that I passed the checkpoint. So this is a little variable inside my car script to see how many checkpoints did this car pass. And now this is another script, the leaderboard script. Okay, because over here in my scene, remember I went to the game view and I have this leaderboard object I added here. And this leaderboard object, I'll show you, has a script on it too. And the leaderboard script, here it is, the script that I wrote, it does things. This is the thing that's going to sort the cars, the order of the cars. So this is where I actually calculate the car position. But it's not just one car, it's going to be all the cars. So every time any car passes a checkpoint, I'm going to recalculate the position of all the cars with this leaderboard script. So when the game starts, I'm going to get a pointer to the Text Mesh Pro UI text object, okay, UI text object. This is something I'm doing here, like which car is the camera looking at? You know, because over here my camera, I should show you when I press play on this, the camera is going to be following behind a car, and I just want to know which car, I want to know who the camera's looking at, because then I'm going to add an extra little arrow. So when you see in the leaderboard, you can say, oh, that's my car, and you can see easily where you are. All right, so I get Text Mesh Pro, point you to that object. I'll find out which car the camera's looking at. And then I get a reference to all the cars. So all these cars here, I want to get a reference to all those cars. So I get, first I find the cars game object. That's this object here. And then the transform, all the child of that are going to be one of the cars. And I just add them to my array of cars. And what I'm adding actually is the script of each car to my array of cars. Okay. And here, as I'm going through all the cars, I see that if the lookout of my camera is equaling this car, then I get the name of the car I'm going to focus on. Okay, so that's in the startup. I get a list of all the cars. I get a pointer to all the scripts, and I find out which car is the camera looking at. Now in the do leaderboard, this is what's going to get called. Oops, sorry. See, every time a car passes a trigger of a checkpoint, then that's where this leaderboard thing is going to happen. It's going to ask the leaderboard script. It's going to tell it to do the leaderboard, to update the leaderboard text, and it's going to return the position of, of this car, the NN car that's calling it. Then I see here if the position is greater than -1, then basically there is a position to report. So on the car's text object, right here, the NN car, the TM Pro text object that I kind of got a pointer to right here. Then I can set the text to have the position and the driver's name. Otherwise, I just set the text to the driver's name. There's no positioning yet because it didn't pass the start line yet. Then I added another thing here for reward and punishment, because every time a car passes a checkpoint, this is for the neural network training of the cars, trying to encourage them to be in first position. So every time I pass a checkpoint, I add a reward, depending, for how close they are to first position, trying to encourage the cars to get to first position. Don't worry about that part though. That's not about the positioning. Okay, so over here, this do leaderboard thing. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Go to definition, right? The car passes a checkpoint, the car triggers a checkpoint. So this is the car's name, the driver's name of the car. So here, all the cars are keeping track of how many checkpoints they passed, right? So first thing is I do is I take the array of car scripts and I just sort the array by descending order. That means from the ones that have the most checkpoints they passed to the ones that have the least amount of checkpoints they passed. I sort the cars in descending order by how many checkpoints they passed. And now the list is resorted. Now I go through the list, and for each item in the list, starting from the first one to the last, the first one is the one that passed the most checkpoints, I'm just going to create a string. This is a string builder string, all right? For the string, I'm going to add a line where it has the name of the car. I'm going to add a line where it has the name of the car with an arrow if this is the car that the camera is focusing on. Otherwise, it's just the name of the car and the position to my leaderboard string, this big string that has a bunch of lines to it, carriage return lines. Okay. And then here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the position of the driver named car. So if this is that driver named car, then my return value is going to be like, that's the position of that car. All right, I'll return that for the car. And then here, the TextMesh Pro object for this leaderboard object, this TextMesh Pro object, then I'll set it equal to that string that I just built up. And that'll show the position of the cars. So this is what it looks like when it's running. And see if it works accurately. So my camera is set to point to one of the cars. And here the game's going. So it looks like my camera's pointing at Shoma. These names are generated randomly. And you can see that Shoma has the position 18, 17, just past the car. 16, just past the car, past another car's position 14. And then here in the leaderboard list, you can see Shoma's here in 14th place. And these are all the cars ahead of her. And will she pass? Yep, now she's in 13th position. She's fighting to get to first position, trying to stay on the road. All these cars are driving by artificial intelligence right now, by neural network. And if you want to know how to get the cars to learn how to drive using a neural network, then I have this super big 4-hour video with all the different things I've learned about getting cars to drive using neural networks that you could watch. Just go to my channel and you'll see it. It's called Self-Driving Cars. So that's it. This is the reporting of position. It's done by setting checkpoints around the track. The closer I set the checkpoints, the more accurate the positioning could, detect for me. Then the checkpoints, as you can see here, are in order, in number order. And this numbering on each checkpoint helps me know which checkpoint you passed. I just count the car, how many checkpoints it's passed. The cars that, of course, are in the front have passed. Look at that guy got flipped over. The cars that are in the front have passed more checkpoints, naturally, because they're in the front. And then I just sort the cars by the checkpoints passed amount to see who's passed the most checkpoints. That person's in the lead. And that's how I calculate race positions using checkpoints. Ta-da! I hope that helps you. Any questions, feel free to ask.